So the two that I wanted to look at on your vocab quiz, or on your vocab list, just to make sure we're good with, is going to be number 5 and number 9, idiom and informational text. I think for definition, you're going to be able to locate a definition for idiom, but I think the definition might prove to be a little confusing when it comes to an example. So that's the reason that I sort of want to go over it.
Yep, thank you.
I think they're all in this period, so you're good. Anybody off the top of your head know definition for idiom? We'll say like an idiomatic phrase from time to time. I don't have anything for idiom. It's a phrase. It's not just one word. You have your name on top. Tommy, nothing for idiom? No. All right. Idiom is going to be a phrase where the meaning is different from the definitions of the individual words. And I'll say this again because I know the handwriting can get kind of messy. So a phrase where the meaning is different from the definitions of the individual words. This could be your definition. Not going to be your sentence, but this could be your definition. So a phrase where the meaning is different from the definitions of the individual words. So there would be a phrase where the phrase as a whole would have a different meaning than what the words themselves would normally imply. This wouldn't count as your sentence, but you could certainly kind of use it as an example, or it would make you think of an additional example. What's it mean when we say pushing up daisies?
Doing nothing.
Doesn't, well, yeah, sort of. It kind of means doing nothing because, Jack, did you say it? You're dead. If you're pushing up daisies, you're dead. Your underground body is literally pushing up, not literally, but figuratively is pushing up daisies. So if we were to say, that person is pushing up daisies, if you look up the words by word and definition, you would think it's a person who's like pushing up plants, but it means that they are deceased. Death, we have a lot of idiomatic phrases. He bought the farm is another way of saying that a person has died. It would be an idiomatic phrase. If we already used this one like the first week of school, if it was raining 10 inches outside, we would go, it is raining cats and dogs. Those are examples of idioms where the meaning of the phrase is different from what the individual word would be.
For this sentence on these, do we have to include the vocab word?
So for these ones, if you wanted to literally write a sentence that was an idiom, I'm okay with that. Or if you had something like where it was a metaphor, you wanted to write a metaphor as opposed to, hey, there's a metaphor, which is, I'm perfectly fine with that. You have the option. So you can either use the word correctly in the sentence, or you could write an example of how that word would be used. People who struggle with idioms would be where, like, English is not your native language. If there's a saying, if there's slang, there's something like that where we understand what it means, but you're learning the language for the first time, idioms can be really, really, really tough. It doesn't always have to be a pushing up daisy kind of thing. There can be some other phrases out there that counts as idioms, but generally those are the ones that trouble people the most. Okay. Rude people. Any questions about idiom? Number 9, I think you know what it is, but should you go to a dictionary or do you go to dictionary.com and look up informational text? I don't think you're really going to get much of a definition for it. Put in your own words, what do you think an informational text is going to be? A text that provides, that is meant to inform you, that provides a lot of information. So it is a text that is meant to inform the reader. That's all you gotta put for a definition. A text that is meant to inform the reader. And Gavin wants to get your definitions and sign this up. So a textbook would be an example of an informational text. You know, an article online from a newspaper would probably be an example of an informational text, but its primary purpose is to inform the reader. Usually there's three main purposes that texts do. It's either meant to inform, it's either meant to entertain, or be meant to persuade, to kind of change an opinion. So this is just saying it's one of those three types where it is meant to inform the reader. So for this one, like I wouldn't want Unique to write down an encyclopedia as your sentence, but you could, you know, such and such is an example of an informational text with the purpose. Alright? The rest I think you should be okay when it comes to finding definitions for them, and then the examples I think would be okay. If between any time between now and Friday there's one that is giving you problems, especially when it comes to the example, to the sentence, let me know. I can certainly help you out. Okay, so vocab list, I can go into the notebook, don't have to worry about that one for now. Okay. This page coming out to you is going to go in handouts. You do want to take out your packet for Oedipus. So you want to have a packet with you along with the sheet that is coming your way. As I said, I know these questions are going to look familiar. I mentioned to you that our performance on the vocab quiz was very good. Our performance on these questions was a bit of a mixed bag. Not because everyone was getting question number 1 right or number 2 right, but a mixed bag because that didn't sound good. That did. You all right? Okay, get water if you ever need it. Yeah, you will. Performance was mixed bag because I didn't get a whole lot of responses back from this one. I think out of 24 people, I have 10. So you can and I already put points into Power School if I got it from you. What I did is it was 7 questions, it was 7 points. If you turned it in, it was a 7 out of 7 because I'm using this one as practice. They're not always going to be that way, and I'll certainly tell you about it as we move forward. So if right now you look in Power School, you don't have anything there for that one, that means because I don't have it. You did not have to turn it in via Google Classroom. If you finish the questions, it would be submitted. So I would have it. So you can double check on Power School. If there's something going on, then you're going to want to have a conversation with me, whether it be at lunch or whatnot, as to why I didn't get it. But the ones that I had 10. The ones that I have were, I already did put points in, so you can kind of double check that. The questions, they were meant to be difficult. In the sense that what they are doing are they are mimicking the way that you will have Keystone literature questions when you take your Keystone exam come May. English 10, everyone takes Keystone exam. For Keystone, you're looking at a 2-day test. You're going to have a day where it is all fiction and a day when it is going to be non-fiction. You'll have about 3 different passages that you're going to be reading from each day. So you're going to have in total about 24 to 25 multiple choice questions, about 7, 8, up to 9 per passage. And then you're going to have roughly 4 constructive responses where you got to write a little bit of an essay too. Tommy's already getting upset about this. The essay is not going to be a big deal. We focus on the constructive response more so the second half of the year. First half, and we'll still do multiple choice questions, but throughout the year, we kind of sprinkle in these multiple choice questions about stuff you read and some other stuff just so that you get familiar with it when that time rolls around.
So for like the presentation test, isn't it a full blown essay?
No, it's a paragraph. you're looking in the ballpark of like 7 to 10 sentences. So we are going to write an essay for Oedipus Rex. I mean, we'll be done with it, the play obviously before we start this. So we're talking later September. But you'll do a full-blown essay for Oedipus. You'll do full-blown essays for the other things that we read. I start with the essays so that then all the things that we do in the essay, those go into the constructive response, but it doesn't feel nearly as bad because now you're doing literally less than what you were before. They're still, I don't want to say tricky because you can do very well with them. But the skills that we do in the essays, you'll do in the constructive response. But it's basically a paragraph. So it's not going to be do your attention grabber, here's your thesis statement. It's more or less coming up with answering the question and then having like 3 examples from the text to support it. So we'll go over all that stuff a little bit kind of later on. The questions on the keystone are tricky in the sense that you can't, and some of us do this, you can't keep track of right and wrong answers in your head. Like when you were doing your vocab quiz on Friday, some of you might have been going, I got number 1 right, I got number 2 right. I don't know if I got number 3 right. Now I'm looking at a 2 out of 3, and that's 66%. I need to get number 4 right. Yep, I got number 4 right. I'm at a 75. I got 3 out of 4. You can't really do that with a keystone because what we're looking for is for you to get about 2/3 right. 2 out of 3 is roughly what percent? 66.66666, like a 67, which if you look at that in a grade, in Power School, if you have a 66, 67%, what's the letter that goes with that? That's a D, which doesn't make you feel good about it. You can't look at these as quite the same way. Should we do these graded? And we will from time to time. If you got 5 out of 7 correct, you did really well. That would show up in the grade book more as like a 7 out of 7. If you got 4 out of the 7 right, that would show up as like a 6 out of 7. So they get curved, not based on who did the best and who did the worst, but what would be acceptable for a keystone test. All right, so we'll talk about those things as we do more of it. But basically what the questions are always forcing you to do is go back in the text, kind of analyze it, and so they do take a little bit more time, which is why you want to have your copy of the play out while we're taking it away. All right? Any keystone questions? There's always the question, does this count? It changes every year. Right now, graduating class of 2021, it is a great graduation requirement. Should that change? It's possible because it seems to every year, but as we stand right here, speak right now about it, it's a graduation requirement. Just moving in. So what I did with the questions, what is up here on the board is a little bit different from yours because I copied and pasted then the passage from the text that would kind of go along with each of the questions. So these are the 7 questions that you had. Anytime we do keystone examples, by all means, came back for more.
3 more. All iPads. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Anytime we're doing any type of keystone type thing, you can have the passage with you, or I'll give you the passage. It's not something that you're just doing from memory off the top of your head. Me, I got one for you. All of these are under the period. And then, Desiree, I've got one. All right, so in the second section of the priest's first speech, so basically the opening of the play. So already here we have that second section, that second paragraph, the priest personifies. So the key word that we're taking a look at here is going to be personifies. When you have personification, what's going on? You're giving usually inanimate objects, and sometimes it can be animals as well, but like human-like qualities with it. Okay. So on here, we want to find out. We got a Roman numeral, so we could be taking a look at death. We could be taking a look at the sea. Could be taking a look at Thebes. We know that it could be, just one of these in case with death. We know that we could have some combinations, or it could be absolutely all 3. So your own eyes must tell you Thebes is tossed on a murdering sea and can't uplift her head from the death surge. Anything going on in this first part here where you would go, we have personification occurring, where we are giving human-like qualities to something.
Thebes was called her.
Okay, so, and not just her, but also her head, which we all have up here. This is going back to Thebes. Thebes is tossed on a murdering sea. Thebes get tossed, cannot lift her head. Her is referencing back to Thebes. So if we're calling Thebes a person and we're giving it a human quality, we know at least 3 is going to be one of the ones that we're going to take a look at. So we're good with there. What we have to now decide is, do we have death? Do we have sea? I'd say there's something else we could take a look at within those opening lines. Okay? So humans, unfortunately, from time to time, murder one another. That is a human quality. What are we applying that quality to? The sea. So we would have personification going on right there. So I know I got 2. This has given me 2 options. I have C, which would be 2 and 3 only. I have D, which could be 1, 2, and 3 only. So now death is the one that I'd have to look at. I can't go, I'm done, and just mark off C. I want to look through the rest of the passage just to see if I have anything else happening. So rust consumes the buds and fruits of the earth. The herds are sick, children die unborn, and labor is vain. The god of plague and pyre raids like detestable lightning through the city, and all the house of Cadmus is laid waste, all emptied and all darkened. Death alone battens upon the misery of Thebes. What do we got going on in that last line?
Death being alone.
Death is alone, and death alone battens upon the misery. Any idea what battens would mean? Take a guess. What do you think it would mean to batten? To beat. And you can even kind of think of batten down the hatches, pull those things down. Basically, you are attacking. So, hey, what else has been personified? We got death. So, at that case, now we have 1, 2, 3, good to go. You may. Just make sure you sign off behind me. With the ones that were submitted for this, we got 80% got this one right. So that's a pretty good sign that we're in pretty good shape. Number 2, the priest's speech makes evidence that he recognizes all the following about Oedipus, except that he, and then you have the options. Probably the most important word in question number 2 is going to be which one? If you miss this word, it messes you up. Except. Because what will happen is folks go, hey, in the passage, he enjoys the God's favor. You mark it right, but that's not the one that we're necessarily looking for. Here, for this one, we are still on the same page as we were with the priest's speech. So we are taking a look at page number 5. Sometimes it's easier to read it for yourself. We're on page 5 at the end of column number 1. So end of the first column right here. So which one do we think is not going to be true that the priest recognizes about Oedipus? This one was kind of pretty evenly split over what people were putting. You are not one of the immortal gods we know, yet we have come to you to make our prayer as to the man's surest and mortal ways and wisest in the ways of God. You saved us from the Sphinx, the flinty angel, and the tribute we paid to her so long, yet you were never better informed than we, nor could we teach you. It was some God breathed in you to set us free. And that first paragraph, so going from here, you are not one of the immortal gods, down to here, are there any of these options that it would seem that the priest is implying that Oedipus does have? Do you see any proof that he enjoys the God's favor, that he is wise, any of those things? Connor? Okay, where are you looking at, just so that we all see the same thing? You're right. Like which part? Where is he saying that you are wise? Okay, so as to the man surest in moral ways and wisest in the ways of God, we know, yep, calling him wise. Anything else in that first part? Today's a popular day. Everyone's coming in.
Really? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're okay. You're fine. You're like number 3.
Wow, sorry.
No, you're good. What else? Anything else besides wise?
said it was some God breathed in you to set you free, maybe enjoys life savor.
Okay, so better informed than we, nor could we teach you. It was some God breathed in you to set us free. If the gods are breathing into you to kind of set us free, boy, it would sure seem like you are enjoying the God's favor. Yeah, would agree with that. So A and B we have found, which means those can't be our answers. We have to look for other ones. Therefore, Almighty King, we turn to you. Find us our safety. Find us a remedy, whether by counsel of the gods or men. A king of wisdom. Again, we got that wise thing. Tested in the past, can act in a time of troubles and act well. Noblest of men, restore life to your city. Think how all men could call you liberator for your triumph long ago. Ah, when your years of kingship are remembered, let them not say we rose but later fell. Keep the state from going down in the storm. Once years ago, with happy augury, it keeps mentioning into a next line that we're not going to kind of worry about. Within this part, would the priest be saying that Oedipus has money, or would it be going that he has compassion? Money or compassion? So he has compassion. He doesn't use the word compassion, but where does it imply that he does have compassion? Really is right. This is where you have to infer, which is one of your vocab words, or list number 2. Where do we see compassion come across? You have a line for it, right? When do you need compassion? Like you as a person, when do you need compassion? Jack? Well, no, I mean, like, did you ever defeat the Sphinx? Like, you as a person, when does Jack need compassion? When does Justice need compassion? When does Nate, when you have to defeat the Sphinx?
You can act in a time of trouble and act well. Noblest men, restore life to your city.
Generally, we need compassion when something bad is going on. Maybe you need extension on a homework. Maybe you need help to get back into the classroom because you went to the bathroom. You should thank Amy for her compassion.
Thank you, Amy, for your compassion.
He was in a time of trouble, needed some help.
She needs like a stick or something. That's a pretty good idea. Or like a rope.
That could be a bonus point project that we could focus on. So if there is a time of trouble, that's when you're going to be looking for compassion. This is being inferred. You have to be able to kind of guess or recognize. You have to make an inference, which is an educated guess, to see that he does have compassion. So all of those things are implied with the exception of C, desiring material fortune, because there's no mention here at all whatsoever that he's looking for money. But that's what makes the questions kind of difficult in some ways, where a lot of times you'll have, I can locate the example right here in the passage, right here in the text, because it tells me directly, with a lot of keystone questions, it's you making a guess, it's you making an educated assumption about it. It's not, it's strictly going to be an answer right there that you can take a look at and be able to recognize. As we do more and more of them, you'll be able to recognize those things. Question 3, last 2 lines of the opening ship. Ships are in the opening speech. Ships are only hulls, citadels are nothing when no life moves in the empty passageways. In these lines, the priest makes his point by means of aphorism, analogy, speech, proverb. There could be a couple issues going on with this. What could be something that makes number 3 difficult to answer? And I can see multiple ones.
Don't know what an aphorism is.
Okay. I'm not going to hold that one against you. And a question mark might show up there eventually. So aphorism we're not sure about. Any other answers we don't know about, since we're taking a look at those. What's an analogy? It's not a reference. It's a comparison. Similes and metaphors are examples of analogies. You're making a comparison. What's a speech? This one, I think we know. It's a speech. We can leave it at that. I think we're okay. What's a proverb? When I get my General Tso's chicken at Young's house, I get a proverb with it.
Oh, was it like, yeah.
The fortune cookie. A wise saying is a proverb. In the Bible, there's a book, which is called Book of Proverbs, where it's literally like wise sayings and all those things. So it doesn't have to be religious. It doesn't have to be something, you know, according to Confucius or anything like that might be in a fortune cookie, but it would be a wise saying. Early bird catches the worm would be an example of a proverb. So proverb is a wise saying. Connor, an aphorism is a wise saying. And again, it's not that you're being, you know, held accountable that you should know this. This will be some terminology we go over. A and D mean exactly the same thing. So what can I do with those two? I can cross them out. If they mean exactly the same thing, I don't have to worry about it. Aphorism is just another way of saying a wise saying. I could see there being an issue with the quote that you're taking a look at with a word.
Speech is generally longer.
You mean like saying if then just those two lines? Yeah, usually a speech is going to be a lengthy part. So the opening, the priests, you could say that whole thing is an opening speech. Which is going to make this a little bit of a concern. Last two lines of his opening speech, which this also is going to be a little redundant to say, what does he do in his speech to make it effective? He gives a speech. So really, what's our answer going to be? By process of elimination, it's going to be an analogy. I could see some folks not being sure what a citadel is. It's a military school, which isn't the reference here. Citadel, I think, is in South Carolina. Citadel is also a prison. You're going to the citadel, it's like the big tower that would be at prison. So ships are only hulls, citadels or prisons are nothing when no life moves in the empty passageways, making a comparison to lack of life in these halls, in these prisons. So we got B, an analogy going on. This would be a Poe question for most of us. Poe being the process of elimination, you can start to take those things out. For Oedipus' statement that he was not sleeping, you're not waking me, is best understood to mean that he is not lazy, dispirited, exhausted, or indifferent. There are really two answers that were coming up most often for this one. 50% we're going with indifferent. 50% we're going with lazy. Those were basically the options that were being given at this point.
Do you want me to give an answer?
Yeah, what do you think?
Indifferent.
How come? Well, number one, what's indifferent mean?
Doesn't care either way.
Okay. So if a person is indifferent, it would be lack of caring. Why do you think it would be indifferent?
Because when he said that he wasn't sleeping or not waking me, he wasn't literally not sleeping.
So this would be an example again of analogy or metaphor where you have a comparison taking place. It's not that I don't care. It's not that you are waking me up to this issue. I've been aware of it. I'm trying to figure out a way that we can get this plague out. So he is not indifferent is the point that he is trying to get across. I do care. You're absolutely right. Any questions about the board? 5. Last line of Oedipus' reply to the priest, the word scant. So we're taking a look at literally what does a word mean. It's going to be plug and play. You're taking A, B, C, D, you're plugging them into scant, see which one would work best. Could best be restated as which of the following. So you would take a look at this, go, yet whenever he comes back, I should do ill to limit whatever duty God reveals. I should do ill to neglect whatever duty God reveals, to weigh, to supply whatever duty God reveals. You're taking a look at which one would best work in that case. What do we think? Says A, what we got, limit.
B.
B's neglect. Now we're gonna arm wrestle. I was gonna say, if we do this long enough, we'll get an answer for C, and then we'll get an answer for D, and someone will say E and F, just to be a smart aleck.
That is alphabet. That is all of them.
What does it mean when he says, I should do ill? Focusing on the word ill. Because you kind of have to restate this a little bit in our own ways. It would be ill to do this.
Bad idea.
Bad idea, unwise. So would it be a bad idea to neglect whatever duty God reveals? Would it be a bad idea to limit whatever duty God reveals? I'm thinking most people are going to come down to A or B. Which one would be worse, to limit or neglect what the gods tell you? To neglect. B.
Oh, I was right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like the whole sleep.
6 and 7 were the two that were most commonly missed. 6 and 7 most common. Oh, keep stuff out. We're still going. We still got a couple minutes here. Oedipus declares, by avenging the murdered king, I protect myself. He's demonstrating that he is. The answer that I'm expecting most people to give
Practical.
wasn't practical. The answer that I was expecting most people to give was B, self-serving. Self-serving is not the correct answer. The correct answer is practical. Why? And honestly, why? And it's not that I'm going to berate you and make you sound like stupid. Why would most people put self-serving? And it happens every year. It's not a bad reflection on anyone in here. Why would people put self-serving? I don't want him to be killed. There's a murderer out there. He could kill me again. Jack, are you going to add anything to it? But what is his intent with it, that he is only doing this for himself, or
Please the gods.
it's please the gods, it'll please the town, like I'll be hiking back to a good king again, people will recognize me, and what's a positive benefit of it? Oh, by the way, I won't be murdered or killed. What would be a good synonym? You got it, that's it. What would be a good synonym for practical? What would be a good word in a place of practical? Reasonable. I'm thinking of an L word. Logical. It would be logical. It would make sense. So his main intent is that he is being practical, that this won't hurt me. Number 7, the answer for this one was going to the priest, where it parallels that the priest words to Oedipus. It's the same main idea, that there is concern about what is happening in Thebes. Vocab, you're going to give to me on Friday. So definition for Friday. If you got the blue passes, make sure you stop up and take care of iPad stuff.
Is that with the